If you want an adventure, you could climb a mountain! Or ride dune buggies through the desert! Or you could just head to your neighborhood Zaxby's. Introducing the Smokehouse Cheddar Barbecue and Southwest Chipotle Filet Sandwich Meals. They're brand new and they'll take your taste buds to wild and exciting new places. Both feature our famous hand-breaded chicken, and they're both available for a limited time. Only at your neighborhood Zaxby's. And don't miss Jumanji: The Next Level, only in theaters.
From Tally to Cali.
It's time
to wake up!
Wake up! Wake up! Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! What up, everybody? It is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's. I'm Aslan Hajavandi. He is Corey Clark. We work for Warchant.com. Use the promo code Warchant30 for 30 free days of access to the ultimate Seminole sports source. All the goodies are done, folks. Christmas is near, but you and I are not near. I'm down in Tampa. You're in Atlanta, but how are you, Corey?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. How are you doing? You doing all right?
Yeah, man. Just one foot in front of the other, day at a time, all that kind of stuff. I feel like I know what it's like to be Corey Clark now. Like I want to get this show over with because I have plans. I've got people to go hang out with. So let's try to make this a little bit quick and easy, man. But things going good. All your Christmas shopping done?
Sure. But let's get something out of the way. Let's be clear here. You'll never understand what it's like to be Corey Clark.
Okay.
Anyway,
right.
Go ahead.
You're right. We're presented by Zaxby.
I do have all my shopping out of the way, which is a couple of them I waited a little too long, and people aren't going to get the actual product. They're going to get a receipt for what was bought, and to say, hey, it couldn't be shipped before Christmas. My bad, but it is coming, and it's the thought that counts.
Isn't it crazy that as a kid, if that happened to you, it was just the end of the world and the most inexcusable just travesty? And then just now, if somebody bought me something, I was like, "Hey, man, it's going to take if I had a girlfriend, I was like, it'll take you another week and a half." I'd be like, "All right, that's fine. I don't care." It's crazy what time does to us, right? We lose our hair, we get smarter.
We grow up. We have a little more perspective. It doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. So, hopefully, Brady's not the one that has to wait for his present.
Well, he's one of them. Yeah.
Oh, Corey.
Well, look, he's getting a bunch. It's just this one. He's going to be shown a receipt and say, "Sorry, man. It couldn't get delivered in time."
Okay. How do you think he's going to respond?
Well, he better respond with "Thank you, sir," and "Merry Christmas to you." Do you need anything else, Daddy? That's what I better hear.
Oh, man. As always, we were presented to you by Zaxby's Indescribably Good. I had a nice chicken finger box before I came down here to Clearwater, so everything's been rocking and rolling for me. Cannot complain. Also rocking and rolling for the Noles, this whole coaching staff thing. It's all coming together, man. So we talked about it, I think, last week with Chris Marv, the linebacker coach. That became, I don't know, has it become official, Corey, on the linebacker thing? But for all intents and purposes, we know it is. But I don't know if they've sent out the email. But we've got some clarity on the offensive side of the ball. Chris Thompson from TCU was hired, and there was, kind of connecting some dots. It was like, hey, he's been an offensive line coach for a while. He'll probably come here to coach the offensive line because that's a need. But it was offensive assistant, and now it seems that Alex Atkins from Charlotte is going to be the offensive line coach. So another sort of a hire that might lack sizzle and name recognition and things like that. But Charlotte's a pesky little program with a pretty decent run game, I guess. So let's be thankful for that.
Well, yeah, when Thompson was hired and we saw offensive assistant, what does that mean? Why isn't he called the O-line coach? You and I both, I think rightly, were like, well, that's weird. But of course he's going to be the O-line coach. That's what he was at TCU. Why would you hire the O-line coach at TCU not to be the O-line coach at Florida State? And now it turns out, we'll talk to Norvell at some point, I imagine, in the next 2 or 3 weeks and ask him exactly how this all works. Because they're not going to have 2 offensive line coaches, you wouldn't think. But I don't know what else Thompson will coach. I'm sure he'll coach something if it's not the O-line, or he'll have obviously duties that, don't involve just not doing anything at practice. He'll have a job to do at practice, but I wonder what his job will be. Nothing has been official on that front. And yeah, Atkins, honestly, I'd never heard of him. I don't keep up to date much with the Charlotte coaching staff, but Norvell, his tie to Norvell has to be that he was at Tulane for 3 years. So he was the O-line coach and the running game coordinator at Tulane for 3 years. And Tulane and Memphis are in the same conference, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So he went up against them a good bit, I imagine. And I think, let's see, I'm reading it right here. They were 23rd in the nation, averaging 220 yards a game, and then 20th in the nation, and then 26th in the nation at Tulane when he was the assistant head coach / offensive line coach. And then at Charlotte, he was the OC / offensive line coach. So now you're looking at we all know Norvell is the main guy, but now you're looking at an offensive staff out of the 5 coaches, at least three will have been offensive coordinators. And another one was a head coach. Mm-hmm. So I guess Thompson, I don't think he's ever been an offensive coordinator, but he was a head coach for 6 years at a good Division II school. So that's a lot of experience running an offense and running a team just on that half of the assistant coaching staff.
Yeah, Atkins having been at Tulane. I also see that he was at Georgia Southern, so he's a Willie Fritz guy. And Willie Fritz is really renowned for his run game that he was able to establish at Georgia Southern, what he's been able to do at Tulane. So that's a good little sort of tree to come from. Obviously, having been part of those prolific offenses, at least in terms of running the ball. And again, it's the AAC, so things are a little more easier to navigate. But all this comes down to kind of like I don't know if it's a theory, but like if you want to dream a little dream, if you're a Florida State fan, I'm at the point kind of where if this is going to work, and you're not going to agree with this, but that's what makes the show great, Corey, is that we rarely agree on things. Right. Is that you almost have to believe that Norvell is borderline kind of, savant when it comes to football, at least offensively, and managing personalities and figuring out who's going to work, well in terms of the way he wants to run his offense and how everybody's going to get along and having coaching chemistry. Because maybe not Norvell himself, but if there was no great jobs that whiffed on Mike Norvell, I don't think. Like last year, I think only maybe last year Mike Norvell could have been a legitimate Division I Power 5 head coaching candidate after what he had done. Like you need at least 3 years at Memphis of showing kind of steady growth to be considered for the job that he has now at Florida State. And UCLA going with Chip Kelly was not a bad. I mean, it looks bad now, but on the surface was a home run kind of a thing. Scott Frost going home to Nebraska obviously made huge sense. Dan Mullen going to Florida where he'd been before. Former boss is down there now. They missed on some guys. They get him. That all kind of makes sense. So, my thing was if Norvell is such a smart savant kind of guy, how come somebody else didn't pluck him up? How did Florida State kind of fall into him or have him fall in their lap? Because we've heard so many other coaches they were kind of going after. So maybe this is just all part of it. Like he just knows these guys that are kind of under the radar, but despite the fact that they haven't, most of these guys haven't been established and have a long reign of success in a major conference in the Power 5 level, he still feels that the way he runs things and the way that their acumen is when he's played against them, that it will translate eventually once they get this roster the way they have to. Like, I really think you almost have to embrace the possibility that this is really, I mean, I shouldn't say afraid of it, but I'll stop talking real quick. Like everything is going to have to come up aces the way it's working. Like he has to be really ahead of the game and ahead of the curve in the way he runs things, and he has to have a really good eye for talent because these guys are not, they're not household names. So it's that's kind of, if you want to be optimistic, that's the sort of mindset you have to have, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to whether you believe in Alex Atkins or not, you believe in Mike Norvell. And that the same thing with Adam Fuller, the same thing with Dillingham, like really all of his coaches. I have made the point, and I'm sure I will over the next 2 or 3, 7 years, that these guys all did go make their bones in other places. A lot of them not just connected to Mike Norvell, but he's competed against them. I'm sure he's recruited against them, and he knows what most of these guys bring. But at the end of the day, you just have to accept and believe that he knows what to look for in a hire when he's hiring an assistant coach. In his track record, I know it's at Memphis, his track record's really good. Like, again, he's hired 25. The only guy that's hired more coaches in the last 4 years is Saban. In his most recent team, with all the new additions on the staff, with new hires, trying to find continuity, is going to the Cotton Bowl, and they won 12 games. So he has a history, which is a very important part of the process. He has a very good recent history anyway, of hiring assistant coaches. And I don't think it hurts to have guys in there that have done it at a high level. And I mean by like, it's different, man, when you've been the head coach of a program.
Yeah.
It's different when you've been the OC. Like, I just think, the more those brains you can get around you, I think it's better for you. I think he sounds like he's open to ideas. It's his show, but it sounds like he's open to ideas. And I think these guys will give him some ideas. And that can't hurt.
I mean, when you compare to that point, you're talking about these guys being, having this sort of this great breadth of knowledge to pull back on in terms of being head coaches elsewhere, being OCs. I think like Mark Snyder was the only guy that had had been a head coach that was on Willie's staff, and his career was kind of going backwards. I mean, he had been a head coach. He helped DC at Ohio State when they won the national title under Jim Tressel. I'm pretty sure he was a DC with them, or at least he was a position coach. He was linebackers and defensive coordinator for them. And then he went to Marshall, and then things kind of started sliding back. He was a DC at like USF or something like that, and then eventually he was a DC at A&M, and then he became a position coach. So he was kind of moving backwards. And he's in his 50s, and so that's not really the upward trajectory you kind of want. Like Atkins is a young guy. Marv, linebacker coach, is a young guy. Thompson, he was a head coach at Abilene Christian. I think being an offensive coordinator at the Power 5 level is probably a better gig than being the head coach at a D2 program, even though it is being a head coach. I think it's when you start putting these guys heads up against guys, Dante Pimpleton was a good friend of Willie's. I mean, he helped introduce Willie to his wife. You're going to keep a guy like that around, obviously. Raymond Woody, it was the Florida sort of ties that bind them, not necessarily what he had kind of accomplished at the collegiate level. And then, Telly Lockett, I like Telly. I think Telly, I'd be fine with him sticking around because he went to Oregon State and kind of earned his stripes by himself. But, yeah, these guys have a great amount of experience. And there's something about the whole youth kind of factor with all this. Most of these guys are pretty young, late 30s, early 40s kind of guys. Marv is a little bit interesting to me, I think, just because – he was at Vandy. I think he went from like a quality assistant to a grad assistant to working at Mississippi State. I don't know how much sort of say-so he has in that defense. I know that's a lot of Bob Shoop sort of principles. But, again, he worked at a good program. Terrell Buckley, friend of the program, was there as well. So maybe on the surface these don't really, stand out. But I think and this isn't – I don't think this is spinning. Like, do you, Corey? I don't think it's spinning trying to say that there's some silver lining and some encouraging momentum behind these hires. I don't think it's spinning. I think it's just kind of looking at it a little more of a nuanced way and kind of drilling down a little bit further.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be spinning to a little. It'd be weird if we came on here and we're like, well, that's a terrible hire. How would we know? So we're always going to be, at least me personally, and I was the same way with Willie. I was optimistic because I'm like, look, his way has gotten him to Florida State, so it must work. These guys around him, he must think they're very good for him, and what he's done at these other places will work in Tallahassee, so he wants to have that core around him. Obviously, it imploded. So with Norvell, I look at it, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think there can be some healthy skepticism, and my skepticism with somebody like Atkins, if he's your O-line coach, is, he's 32, which I'm cool with. I don't mind that he's on the younger side. He's never recruited at this level. He's been at Tulane and he's been at Charlotte, essentially, in Georgia Southern. He's never had to go walk into a living room after Alabama left. He's never had to do that. So, again, though, I think the beauty about Florida State, and it's the truth, is if you're good on the field, it recruits itself. So if he can just get Florida State to be competent on the offensive line, then, yeah, it should start recruiting itself. And you don't have to be, I don't know, Ron Zook to get guys to come to Florida State. You have to be competent, and they'll come. So if you can just fix it to competency, you're doing well, and you're on the right path. And yeah, man, I just think what are we at now? By the way, are there 3 spots left?
2. So I'll list them right now for us, Corey. Here, so 8 of the 10 full-time assistants: Chris Marv, linebackers; John Papachis, I might be saying that incorrectly. I apologize. Defensive ends and special teams. I think was he most recently at Maryland?
Yeah.
Okay. Odell, obviously, coaching the D-line. Adam Fuller, defensive coordinator. Ron Dugan's wide receivers. Alex Atkins, offensive line. Kenny Dillingham, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks, and then Chris Thompson, your deputy head coach / offensive assistant. So you have 2 more positions there. Special teams is handled, linebackers is handled, defensive line is handled. You basically need a secondary coach and then probably a running backs coach. I would imagine Thompson would probably do tight ends and then be the deputy or whatever you have.
Right.
And then maybe a guy like Telly Lockett fits in there, but perhaps Telly would have already been hired full time if that was the case, or maybe there's somebody he thinks it could be better, and if falls through, maybe he keeps Telly. But yeah, two more spots left.
Yeah, and so DBs for sure, and then running backs are the 2, right? And and one of these guys is going to be a recruiting coordinator. Telly Lockett does have a purpose in the sense that he really does know. He was the coach in Miami, right? He was Dalvin he was Devontae's head coach. Yeah. So he does have big-time connections in Miami. And look, if you're going to win in the state of Florida, you've got to have connections. You've got to have ties. You've got to have people that are trusted that down there in that area. Telly Lockett's name means something down there. You're right. I would figure if he was on the staff, it would have already been named maybe. But I guess I'm selling Telly Lockett in case it is him. I don't think you and I would have a problem with him being the running backs coach at all, right?
No.
Because I don't think he's Willie's guy.
He wasn't, no.
I mean, Willie helped him move ahead, but he had already kind of established his own thing and had done things without Willie. Yeah. So I don't think that, Norvell would be worried too much about that. And yeah, man, the guy should theoretically help you immensely in recruiting if he's on the staff. So you just got to close it out with the DB and a running backs coach, and then figure out who the recruiting coordinator is.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure Norvell already knows who it is.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think it's. I guess they just haven't named it or made it official yet. I am genuinely interested in how Thompson and Atkins coexist. Like, what will the role be? Because if he's coming as the O-line coach, then yeah, what will Thompson's role be? Why would the O-line coach at TCU come to coach tight ends at Florida State?
Right. Well, the deputy assistant coach thing might be a little. Maybe he wants something a little more slower pace or something a little more dynamic. I remember talking to Ira about it, I think Friday when we spoke to Odell, and he was mentioning it could be one of those things where maybe Thompson coaches the tackles, and then Atkins focuses on the center and the guard positions, because that's the way some programs are doing that. And I think Randy Clements, to a certain degree, would have the GA Jake Reed a lot of times would help out with the centers, because he was a college center himself. So he would work with the center and the guards, and then Clements would work with the tackles. So it could be one of those things where they kind of split up the offensive line. I mean, so many people split up defensive line, and I know you mentioned it before on the show. It's obviously a different skill set, being a pass rusher and being a guy that plays in the interior. But I think even maybe on the offensive line, to a certain degree, there's some different techniques, and maybe a little more of a benefit if you have a guy that focuses on your interior guys and someone who's working with the guys on the edges at the tackle position. So, but again, to your point, like trusting Mike Norvell, I would imagine he's got a really good plan that would bring Chris Thompson away from TCU to. To your point, he wouldn't come here just to coach tight ends. He's not coming here just to help Trey McKitty or Cam McDonald catch 25 passes.
What I also like is I do like, out of these 8 guys, I really like the mix of young, not young and old, but young and not as young. Right. None of these guys are old. Odell's the oldest, but you've got, so far you've got 2 Florida State guys that have been here and done that. Odell wasn't going anywhere. And then you also got Dugans. Then you got guys from bigger schools. You got guys from smaller schools. You got, old and, or like I said, young, kind of young. It seems like a really good, healthy mix. Thompson's probably the oldest of the guys he's hired. But again, he has a history of being a head coach. So there's some wisdom in there. There's some experience. There's some youthful exuberance. It seems like a pretty neat core. Bowden's best staffs had that. Jimbo's staff had that. Mm-hmm. He had, when he was recruiting, he needed Damian, he needed Coley, but then he also had other guys on the staff that were a little more grizzled, a little more experienced. The O-line coach for sure. I think that's good for a staff to be diversified and varied like that.
And also, when you have a guy like Mike Norvell, who seems to be pretty hardworking, seems to be quite organized, seems to be quite meticulous, and methodical in what he wants to do, I think that also elevates the way your coaching staff is going to operate and function. And gratitude or appreciation, I do wonder kind of, Willie helped bring a lot of guys along. And I just don't know if they ever, if they stepped up for him the way he stepped up for them and helping them get their breaks, if they really were top-notch coaches that really worked, were grinding it away, watching game film and trying to help game plan stuff. I know they were pretty hard on the recruiting trail, but to your point, I mean, this mix of coaches he has, I just think these are guys that are either on the rise or guys that have seen, other experiences, whether it's being a head coach or an offensive coordinator, that they can maybe kind of appreciate what Mike's trying to put together, and will have that sort of enthusiasm and that focus and that renewed energy to come here and make it work. Because with Willie, it just seemed like everything was going to be easy. Like we're going to run an easy offense, we're going to run an easy defense. I made it work at USF. Trust me, I got it covered. You guys remember how this all works. It's a little bit rusty and sluggish at first, and then we get this thing rolling along, and that's just not the way it worked out. I think with Mike Norvell, it's going to be a much more kind of ferocious, day one, hit the ground running, and they realize the hard work that's ahead, and they're all going to be, willing to put it in, and that what has me feeling optimistic. But yeah, I mean, you think about if they get Terrell Buckley, and I hate to almost like keep bringing that up, because if they don't get him, then there might be a sense of disappointment. But I mean, like, imagine if they round out the staff with T. Buck and they keep Telly on. It's pretty solid, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I just, again, I think at this point, you just have to, no matter who he brings in, just trust the guy. Just trust him. I mean, all these decisions he's made, again, got him to Florida State. Now, I know that didn't work out for the last guy having that mindset, but the dude before it did, and the dude before him it did. So whatever they've done in their hiring practices to get to this point, they're going to keep trying to do that, which makes perfect sense. You wouldn't change it up now. I think the pool obviously is bigger when you're at Florida State to get assistance than it is at Memphis. But I think I have to imagine that for the most part, he got his first or second choice on almost every pick, which is, at that point, that's what you hired this guy for. That's why you're paying him whatever they're paying. What are they paying? 3.8 or something? Whatever they're paying, that's what you're paying him for, to make these decisions. You gotta trust that he's doing the right thing.
Like, what does give you the biggest pause? Is it just that these guys are all from, I'm not trying to talk out both sides of my mouth, and because we didn't want a whole bunch of yes men and a whole bunch of guys that had worked directly under him, but it just seems like there's these sort of. Is it the fact that so many of these guys are from the AAC or have not been at a Power 5 program for so long, or is it more of the recruiting aspect? And I know you said that once this thing gets rolling, if you put a good product on the field in your Florida State, you'll recruit well. But with the way the roster is going to be year one, and maybe the struggles he's going to go through, I mean, my concern is more along the lines of, can these guys recruit and know what it takes to really be able to pull guys away from Dabo, or get a guy to think twice about committing to Kirby Smart? Because I think I mentioned it last week. Sam Pittman, who got hired at Arkansas, I think he said, like, on some sort of one-on-one sit-down with the radio guy for Arkansas, basically him going to Georgia, like, what he learned the most is just what it really takes to recruit at the highest level to be successful, because, like, Kirby showed him what has to be done, i.e., huge bags full of sums of money.
Sure. Don't say that. How dare you impugn the great University of Georgia?
Commit to the G. Commit to Athens.
You're committing to the G. You're not committing to the George Washington. I guess if you're paying off kids, you're giving them more than just George Washingtons. Hey, by the way, a little trivia. Do you know who's on the cover of the 50?
Yeah, Ulysses S. Grant.
Look at you. Who's on the 100?
Benjamin Franklin?
Man, you know them all. How crazy is it that I think they're obviously out of circulation now, but that there used to be like $10,000 bills.
Right.
How stupid was that? Like, just imagine you just a $10,000 bill fall. Why would anybody need a $10,000 bill?
Like, even in this day and age, especially back then when, the $10,000 bill probably equates to, like, modern day, like $3 million.
Well, maybe not that much with the inflation, but close. But yeah, I think with the pause with me, it has nothing to do with his coaching acumen or really even his recruiting, because I do think he has a chance to be a dynamic recruiter. He does have a big personality. It's this season is set up. This next season is set up for straight average. It's a hard schedule. You don't have a ton of proven talent returning. Don't even know who your quarterback's going to be. It could be another kind of ugly, mediocre, sluggish year. How does that impact them on the recruiting trail? Because that to me, are they going to be good enough recruiters against the schools they're going to be recruiting against to overcome what has been a 500 program now for 3 or 4 years? Are they going to be able to get in homes and do what Jimbo did in 2010 as soon as he took over? Can he do that? Now, maybe not to the level of Jimbo, but close. Because remember, in a lot of that, I don't know how much of it, when you look back in hindsight, it's been a decade now, but how much of that 2011 recruiting class, which was number 1 in the country, was because of the 10 wins that Florida State had in 2010 in Jimbo's first year? Like, I think there were a lot of kids that maybe liked Willie Taggart a lot and believed in him and wanted to go play for him. But when they saw the product on the field, they just couldn't pull the trigger. They just couldn't do it. They didn't feel good about it because of what they saw on the field. So how is that? Is that going to happen with Norvell? Where, man, they feel really good about him. They believe in his message. But, man, can I risk my 3 or 4 years in college going to a school that's 500? Can he really get them out? So if he can have some success early, I think it'll recruit itself, and I think he can get the train running again. But that's my pause, is can he? Not through any fault of his own. It's just how quickly can he turn this thing around? That's the only thing that really gives me pause, man. I do think they'll be. I think just from the power of his personality, he certainly believes in his message. Dillingham certainly is a guy that I can imagine can go into a living room or go into a coach's office and really be impressive. But is that going to be enough to overcome 18 and 19 in the last 3 years?
Yeah. I think what we maybe didn't appreciate about the recruiting class that Jimbo put together, and for Norvell, something that this kind of might apply, is the fact that, in 2011, Florida State, was so far removed from having been a power program. If you want to call 2003 a very good season, kids that were committing in 2011 were what, like in 3rd grade? Like 2nd grade when Florida State was, playing in the Orange Bowl against Miami in 2003. So, like, seniors and juniors, the 2021 signing class, these kids were in 6th grade when Jameis Winston was the national championship Heisman-winning quarterback for Florida State. So, like, that window of, like, nostalgia and kids growing up and actually seeing Florida State just absolutely demolish and annihilate people is still going on. So he still has that kind of window
Not
to take.
Not just Jameis either, but you got Dalvin Cook in the NFL, you got Jalen Ramsey in the NFL, you got Derwin. You got all these big names from Florida State. It does still resonate. Yeah. And you're right. That's a very good point. That does help because Florida State, it had been, what had it been, a decade since they played for a national title when Jimbo took over. Yeah. So he got a really nice class in 2010. They immediately turned it around and won 10 games. And then obviously the 11 class happened. So, man, if Norvell, if he could just get to 8 or 9 wins, just get to 8 wins and beat somebody you're not supposed to beat. Give this program life, and then let's see what happens. Because I do think the staff he's put together is good, and I do believe in what he's going to be doing on offense. I do believe in that. Defense is another story, not because everything gets Adam Fuller. It's just I have to see it to believe it about this defense turning around because it's just been gross the last few years. But yeah, man. I don't really have a lot of pause, man. I'm more and more getting on board with this. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you'd have told me 6 weeks ago, hey, the Memphis coach is going to be coaching Florida State. I'd be like, oh, really? All right. But now just seeing how his program has run the last 3 weeks, the way his coaches talk about him, and the way his coaches just interact in general, the way he was able to recruit in a short amount of time, man, there's a lot of positive signs so far. And I assume he's going to have a full staff. Yeah. He's not going to just stop at 8.
Yeah, it was crazy if you would have told me like 4 or 5 weeks ago, you're going to have the Memphis head coach, the Charlotte offensive line coach, the Memphis defensive coordinator. I'd just been like, stop.
Right.
But, I'm coming around to it. Again, it's on the surface, maybe not, it's Cinderella. You got to clean her up a little bit.
At Birch Orthodontics, they know what a difference a beautiful and healthy smile can make in your life.
They take the time to get to know you and perform a thorough exam so that they can make an individualized treatment plan just for you or your child.
They use the latest technology in a warm and comfortable environment. So whether you are interested in traditional metal or clear braces or clear aligners, they can give you the smile you deserve. They know investing in your smile means investing in your future. And at Birch Orthodontics, they are honored to be a part of your smile journey.
Serving Tallahassee for 16 years and supporting the Noles since forever. Check them out at birchorthodontics.com. BURCH orthodontics.com.
So is Levitt going to Florida Atlantic?
I
thought I saw that on Twitter on Sunday.
No way.
That he was going to be he's going to be Willie's DC.
That's beautiful. I mean, if he walked away from Florida State and everything, yeah. Sun Sentinel saying set to be FAU's next. Wow. All
so there you go.
Get the band together.
Yeah. Maybe Cristobal will come down and coach the O-line.
Okay, so I don't want to. Oh, so you keep Harlan Barnett. Harlan Barnett was good enough for Florida State, but Jim Levitt, you couldn't figure out a way to make him your defensive coordinator. Oh my gosh, I don't even.
Hey man, that was he didn't want to come. He didn't want to come that after 17.
Well, not me talking about. Then I'm talking about going into this season.
Oh well, yeah. You could have maybe made that change, but maybe he tried and Levitt was like, no, I don't want to do that to my career. I'm not going to sabotage myself. He could be just the guy that comes in and halfway through the season and there's his hands aren't dirty with that poor excuse for a defense.
I'm telling you, they're going to win like 10 games down in Baton Rouge. Let me keep saying that. Boca Raton, and then all the Twitter nonsense. Oh, look what Florida State did. Karma, blah, blah, blah. Can't wait. It's going to be great. Last thing before we go, I didn't get to watch the basketball.
I don't think Florida State gets too much grief for firing Willie Taggart, do they? Not even nationally, I don't think.
Clearly. Or actually, no, maybe not that. Just you're pretty neutral on things. Yeah, no, there's a lot of people that I think are rooting. Not again. I don't know how to talk about it without infuriating people, so I'm going to skip it. It's the holiday season.
Good. Yeah, skip it.
Basketball, I did not get to watch it, but apparently Florida State rallied from a late deficit to take down USF, so that's a good thing for Ham and the boys.
Yeah, it was an ugly game. Good teams win when they don't play well, and Florida State certainly didn't. Really struggled offensively, which it's just going to be a grind all year offensively for them. They're never going to be. They just lost too much darn talent, man. And they lost their two best rebounders. Obviously, we know Mann and Kabengele were good players, really good players. But they saved so many possessions with offensive rebounds, either put-back dunks, just follow-up baskets. They were really, they helped you so much in the half court, and obviously Terrence was great in the open court too. It's just going to be a struggle. Hey, man, good for them. You win when you shouldn't. South Florida's not a bad team either. Yeah. I don't think their record's very good, but they've had some really close losses. They're not North Florida, although North Florida's pretty good too. Hung in with Syracuse on Saturday night for a long stretch. But man, their defense travels. Their defense plays well for the most part. And my man Anthony Polite, I got to give it up to Anthony Polite, man. I watched him. I even think I wrote this on the message boards 8 weeks ago, before the season started. I watched a scrimmage, and I'm like, man, Anthony Polite. I even wrote this. I think he's just not an ACC caliber player. And he's always going to be the 8th or 9th or 10th guy on the bench. He might hit some shots for you, but he's just not all that talented. But my man was named MVP of that game, even though he didn't play in the final 5 or 6 minutes when the game was actually won. He was named MVP, which good for him. He's had some nice moments. Nice shooter, good backup guard. And again, that's the strength of this team, man, is the depth that they can play with. So yeah, they got a week off until they play on the 28th. They play North Alabama, maybe, and then they resume conference play on New Year's Eve. But they're 10-2, and the FSU women are 12-0.
Watch out. Break them up.
Yeah, beat Michigan on the road. Well, it wasn't on the road. It was neutral. It was in Connecticut. Beat Michigan. They came back as well. And Gillespie had a triple-double. Man, she's really good. They have like 2 or 3 of the with Gillespie and man, they have like 7 or 8 girls that can really, really play. Sorry, women. They can really, really play. And man, this she hasn't been to the Final Four yet. And I'm not making predictions. I'm not doing it. But man, that would be really cool to see Sue get to the Final Four. And this team is certainly talented enough to get there because they really rebound well, and they got a bunch of different ways to beat you.
Speaking of the 28th, that's when we'll get coordinators in El Paso. So
you have a practice schedule. They are an interview schedule, like a media schedule?
Yes.
Okay. So you'll get Barnett and Kendall.
Oh, yeah, one last time.
All right, man. Huh.
But what am I going to do the 26th and the 27th, you ask? Because that's what I'm asking myself.
What are you doing there? They have practice? Is that open?
No, I don't know. They're getting to town 1 p.m. Florida State Mountain Time, and then they're going to Top Golf later on in the evening, and then Friday they're going to go to Fort Bliss and hang out with the troops apparently.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's a photo op.
Yeah. But yeah, they haven't shown us they haven't sent us the practice schedule. I think that's going to be coming down hopefully as people are listening to this, we'll hopefully have it by then. But yeah, they just showed us the media sort of events or whatever, what have you. So yeah, 28th we get the coordinators, 10 a.m. for old time's sake.
Yeah, perfect. So noon out here, noon our time.
Yeah.
All right, man. Sweet.
All right. With that said, we're going to probably be done for the week. Actually, I don't know. Maybe Ira and I might throw something together when we land in El Paso just because, we're spending gobs of money to send us out to El Paso, so we better crank out some content. So we'll probably drop something later on the week. But Merry Christmas, Corey.
Hey, man. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays to everyone. I don't know if will we do one after Christmas? I guess we will, right? Like
for
maybe
this week, I don't know. I mean, maybe. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't, I ride you too hard sometimes, Corey. I think sometimes, I gotta rest your arm up. I try to make you like Eddie Day, what was the name from Minnesota? Eddie Day, Eduardo?
Every day Eddie Guarardo.
Yeah. And I just need to kind of maybe, pace you sometimes. So I don't know. I mean, no one's going to work, and no one's in a rush to get back to work, and everyone listens to this when they're going to work. So I'm not going to force it, but Ira and I might throw something together. I don't know. I'll reach out to you, and if you want to talk to the masses, you can unleash what you got in store.
But either way, just wanted, because I don't know if we'll do one before the end of the year, or how many, maybe 1 or 2. But yeah, just wanted to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone that listens to this show. Had a lot of people come up to us at the charity bowling event we were at on Friday night for Jeff Cameron. Everybody was very positive, said a lot of nice things. It's crazy how much y'all like this show. I shouldn't say it's crazy. It makes perfect sense, actually.
It does.
But it's always really nice to meet people that come up and say how much they enjoy the show and listening to us and giving you a hard time. It really is fun. It really is. I'll be honest. When I took the job with Warchant, I had no idea this was happening. This was going to be a part of it. Like, I knew I would be on the radio or at that point it was a radio show too. And I would be on that show some, and I would have a presence in podcast form for Warchant, but I had no idea it would take off like this. I had no idea I'd meet my best friend for life as the co-host. So it's really worked out better than I could have ever imagined.
Surprise. Here we are, man. Who would have thought?
We did it.
We did. All right, man. Can't say anything better than what Corey just left us with. So with that said, everybody, have a Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you later.